It's a new year, and I like to start New Year's by talking about some of my favorite movies. So today, I'm going to tell you my favorite movies starting with each letter of the alphabet. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. If you're up for the challenge, share your favorite movie starting with each letter of the alphabet. To state the obvious, my list is not the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. My criteria going into this is the deserted island criteria.
Here I am.
If I was stranded on an island with a solar-powered Blu-ray player, what movies would I want to take with you? So I'm not trying to impress you with my sophisticated taste in movies. I'm trying to get a great set of movies for while I'm alone on this island. And let's get started. Starting at the beginning, we're going with aliens. There's two types of people in the world. Those that believe that Aliens is better than Alien, and those who are wrong.
You serious?
Obviously, I'm in the first category, and I think the movie Aliens takes the fantastic foundation that Ridley Scott laid and just builds upon it. It tells a more complex story with a deeper personal journey for the Ripley character and provides more action. And just in general, I resonate more with James Cameron's visceral action over the aesthetics and ambiance that Ridley Scott creates. But also, Ripley, one of my absolute favorite movie characters of all time. It's powerful, powerful stuff, and I love this movie. Next up, B, Back to the Future, a near-perfect time-traveling adventure that's so good that we all forgive the fact that there's an incest plotline.
Ooh, I love it.
This movie takes a fantastic, timeless concept about a high schooler meeting his parents when they were in high school, combines it with a perfectly crafted script that pays attention to the details, and then casts that script perfectly, and it just feels kind of like lightning in a bottle where everything comes together. The humor lands, every single character pops, and they just managed to find a way to make every detail exciting, interesting, and vibrant. Then we have C, Captain America Civil War. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I absolutely love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this movie basically epitomizes what I think makes the MCU so great. It's a direct follow-up to Avengers Age of Ultron as well as Captain America Civil War, while tying in plot lines from the Incredible Hulk as well as the Iron Man trilogy and more. The central conflict feels earned because we've known these characters for so long and they've been fleshed out that we can believe that they would have a different interpretation of the best path forward. But while it has earned drama, it also has fantastic fan service, a great movie inside of a great franchise. A runner-up on this one was Casino Royale, but with the way this list played out, I had basically to choose between did I want an MCU movie or a James Bond movie, and I would go MCU over James Bond. For D, we're going with Die Hard, a perfectly constructed action movie as well as a perfectly constructed Christmas movie about an estranged husband trying to reconnect with his wife at a business Christmas party, and then some terrorists get in the way and he has to fight them off so he can save his wife and go celebrate Christmas with the family.
Merry Christmas.
What makes this movie so special is there's so much attention paid to the details. Every line of dialogue in the first 15 minutes sets up something important that happens later on. A small line of dialogue about taking his shoes off is very important for what happens an hour later. They cared about earning the moments, the tension, and the drama, while also having a bunch of great one-liners, a bunch of great action sequences, and by the time you get to the end of it, you've got a family coming back together for Christmas. For E, we're going with The Empire Strikes Back, another example of a sequel that is better than the original, that just takes all the plot lines established in the first film and ups the stakes, deepens the emotions, and gives us one of the best coming-of-age stories that we've ever gotten as we see Luke truly start to become the Jedi. But along the way, he makes mistakes. He still has faults. He's not a perfect hero. He's a very faulty person trying to do the right thing. I think a big part of what makes this movie so special is that George Lucas stepped back with this film, trusted Lawrence Kasdan to work on the script and Irvin Kershner to direct the film, so you get all of George Lucas's strengths as a visionary without some of his weaknesses as a writer or a director of actors. Put it all together and you get my favorite movie in one of my absolute favorite franchises. Next up, F, A Few Good Men's, a compelling courtroom drama starring Tom Cruise as well as Jack Nicholson. Basically, it tells the story about this lawyer that has all this potential, but he's always cheated his way around having to actually go into the courtroom, and then he finds himself being forced onto this highly complicated case where along the way, he doesn't believe his clients at first, and then he starts to actually believe in them as well as himself. It's based off a script from Aaron Sorkin as well as a play from Aaron Sorkin, so you have his vibrant characters as well as dialogue. And honestly, it's the best courtroom film of all time. It's the best Tom Cruise film of all time, and that is the truth.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Okay, that might be overstated, but it is my personal favorite courtroom film and my personal favorite non-action Tom Cruise film. From there, G, Ghostbusters, a fantastic genre-bending adventure that can be hilarious, it can be scary, and all of it is entertaining. What makes the movie so special is that while it is laugh out loud funny, it never really feels like they're trying to set up jokes and punchlines. The humor flows organically from Bill Murray's fantastic performance as well as just the odd situations that are happening inside of the film. And while there is lots of humor, there's also a bunch of scares and adventure and character moments, and it's balanced wonderfully between all of these different things, so much so that they've been trying to recapture the magic for 36 years and they keep failing at it. Next up, H, we're going with Human Centipede, and this is another example of a franchise where each movie is better than the last. Tells the story about a quirky scientist who gets a group of people, and I'm not going to finish that sentence because I have a lot of young viewers on my channel. I actually haven't seen any of the Human Centipede films, and personal goal in life, to keep it that way. Real H, Home Alone. I was the perfect age and the target audience for this movie when it first came out. I saw it in the theater and I absolutely fell in love with it, and I've rewatched it every single December for the last 30 years. And now that I'm a grown-up and have 3 kids of my own, all of them absolutely love the film. My 2 oldest very frequently at random times throughout the year will ask if we can watch either Home Alone 1 or Home Alone 2. With that magical John Williams score and just the right moments of sentimentality, it actually is like this family film where you're rooting for these awful people. Somehow all the ingredients come together to just make a family classic. H was a tough letter. I had several runner-ups. How to Train Your Dragon. I love that trilogy of films. They're my favorite DreamWorks animation films. And then, of course, you have Halloween, one of the great slasher films of all time, and a great John Carpenter film. There's a lot of competition with H. For I, we've got Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I've pretty much always said that Raiders of the Lost Ark is the greatest adventure film of all time, but Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is just as good as it, and they found a way to make it a deeper and more emotional story by bringing Sean Connery in as Indiana Jones's dad, which makes it the funniest film inside of this franchise while still having all the fantastic action of Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's so many memorable sequences, memorable lines of dialogue, and it also happens to be one of the very first PG-13 movies I was allowed to see in the theater. This is another tricky one because Inception is another one of my absolute favorites, but because of a complication that comes with the letter R and what I have to do there, I'm trying to pick the right movies while I'm stuck on that island, and because of that, Inception couldn't make the cut. With J, I'm going with Jurassic Park. Now, Steven Spielberg has directed 2 iconic adventure films involving creatures eating people. An unpopular opinion, I'm gonna go with Jurassic Park over Jaws. It's another one where I was just the perfect age when it first came out to be just blown away by seeing dinosaurs on the big screen, the special effects, and being swept away on the adventure. And as I've gotten older, so many of the other details about the characters themselves make the film so much better. When you rewatch it, you realize the chaos doesn't really even start until over halfway through the movie, but you don't care because you're swept away on this adventure of seeing these dinosaurs come to life. Now, of course, Jaws is also a fantastic film that, objectively speaking, might be better than Jurassic Park, but while I'm stuck on an island, I don't want to be scared of going in the water, so I couldn't include Jaws on this list. Next up, K, The Karate Kid. Now, there's a newfound love for The Karate Kid because of the explosive popularity of Cobra Kai, but this is one of these franchises I have always loved and had a sweet spot in particular for the original Karate Kid. It's one of the best sports movies of all time, but it's just a fantastic drama as well, as you have the story about this boy in need of a father figure and a father figure in need of a son. And so you have this underdog story that's compelling in and of itself while really caring about the dynamic between the two characters as that bond forms between them. It's compelling stuff, so much so that it's able to take this pretty weird story about a band of evil kids from a bad karate dojo that ride around on motorbikes with headbands and bully kids, and it turns that into a serious, compelling drama that has stood the test of time and compelled audiences and generations for 36 years. For L, we're going with The Lion King. Not that one, the other one. Yeah. This is my personal favorite animated film of all time, where they took kind of a Shakespearean drama and wrapped it in a Disney skin and filled it with fantastic music that's memorable, it's catchy. When you put all that together, you have a story that's fun like all Disney films. It has music that you want to sing along with, but it also has a big emotional punch. And it's a story that you can kind of interpret different depending on your age, and you resonate with the characters in different ways depending on your age at the time. So as I've grown older and become a father myself and watch this with my children, I view the film and connect emotionally with it in a different way. And that's when you know you have a film that just has something special about it. For M, we're going with The Matrix. When this movie first came out, I was a bit of a contrarian skeptic because I was like, hey, wait a minute, some of these plot points are from the Terminator. But as some time passed and I was able to soak it in a little bit more and understand it, realized that's what makes this movie so brilliant. It pulls influences blatantly from martial arts movies and John Woo movies and anime and the Terminator, and it brings them all together and creates something fresh and original that's a great version of all the things that it pulled from while feeling like its own thing with an interesting mythology, fantastic action, and a great The One storyline. For N, I'm gonna go with Nightcrawler. This is a deliciously sick thriller from just a few years back where Jake Gyllenhaal disappears into this super creepy guy that wants to be famous and be a news reporter. And so he starts like trying to track down these stories and then starts trying to cause the story so he can be the first person to show up. And you just kind of see his descent into madness. It's so perfectly pulled off, and you realize just how good of an actor Jake Gyllenhaal is. This is another tricky one because there wasn't an obvious standout on top on it. Some runners-up would be like 1917 from just a year back, a World War I story, because it's set in 1917, and then National Treasure, a good old goofy Nicolas Cage adventure. So if I want some U.S. history, I'll go with National Treasure. If I want some World War history, I would go with 1917. And if I want to see a sick performance from Jake Gyllenhaal, I would have gone with Nightcrawler. I guess I went with Nightcrawler today. For oh boy, we're going with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? This is a Coen Brothers written and directed film that's kind of an adaptation of The Odyssey. It stars George Clooney, and it's this very oddball adventure about these guys on this road trip, and then they end up creating this song. It's a movie that was, when I first started kind of digging deeper into films and not just watching blockbusters and spectacle, this is one that I discovered. And ever since I saw it 20 years ago, I've had the song Man of Constant Sorrows stuck in my head. Talk about the Coen Brothers a whole lot, but if you were asking me what is my favorite of their movies, this is the one that's my favorite. For P, I'm going with Predator, a perfect sci-fi action thriller. It kicks off as a story about some mercenaries on a mission where they think something might be a little bit off, and then it turns out everything is off about this mission, and they find themselves way in over their head being hunted instead of being the hunters, all leading to a showdown between Dutch, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the Predator himself. It perfectly paces out the action, slowly builds up the tension, and you see these guys that have it all together slowly start to fall apart, all with that lead performance from Arnold Schwarzenegger. That for me, this movie stands out amongst his films as, even though it's very clearly one of his iconic performances, it doesn't feel like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie to me. It feels like a John McTiernan movie to me, and that's probably the biggest praise that I can give this film. The obvious runner-up on this one would be Pulp Fiction. I love Pulp Fiction. It's my favorite Quentin Tarantino film. But Predator is so good, and I love sci-fi action movies. Cue A Quiet Place, a wonderfully crafted thriller that takes this high concept about these creatures attracted to sound and combines it with the right family drama and dynamics, leading to a movie jam-packed with big emotions as well as tense thrills from beginning to end. Right off the bat in this movie, it demonstrates to you that it is not afraid to do horrible things, and so you feel the danger at the very beginning, but also that event at the beginning sets the stage for the family dynamics, the emotional moments, and the payoff that happens all throughout the rest of the film. With R, we're going with Rocky, the greatest sports movie of all time, where it takes this kind of loser that's never really given his all to something and gives him a chance, and in that he decides to go for it, discovers his confidence, meets a girl, and it tells a story where as you move into the final fight, what matters isn't who wins the fight, but that our hero overcame his personal conflicts. And so he has the more important victory while not really even caring what happens at the end of the fight. And it gave me my personal favorite movie character of all time, Rocky Balboa. Now, we have a bunch of runner-ups when it comes to all the Rocky movies except 5, we can just toss that one out. I strongly debated picking Rocky 4 over the original Rocky because I just find that movie so weirdly rewatchable. And then, of course, we have Raiders of the Lost Ark, the greatest adventure film of all time. But as I was going to this island, I had to decide whether I was going to take Raiders or whether I was going to take Rocky. I had to take some Rocky with me. That's also why when it came to I had to get some Indiana Jones in there, and Inception got tossed to the side. I'm sorry, Christopher Nolan. For S, we're going with Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. What this movie does so well is it acknowledges the fact that it's the follow-up to a TV show from 15 years earlier and has these characters growing, changing, and aging. So you take this space adventurer, Captain Kirk, and give him a desk job and then put him in a situation where he has to become the captain again. And there's something very compelling inside of that adventure as he's rusty. He doesn't make all the right choices. He's reflecting on his life, and they include some elements in there where you see all the lives that he could have lived instead. So it's fantastic Star Trek. It's fantastic sci-fi. It's deep, it's emotional, and it has an amazing space battle at the end and an awesome sacrifice that tugs on the heartstrings every single time. Of all the potential S runner-ups I could mention, I have to bring up Richard Donner's Superman, really both 1 and 2 there. That's the superhero stuff that I grew up with. I wouldn't have this channel, I wouldn't be here if not for Richard Donner's Superman. They mean so much to me, which is tough because it came head-to-head with Star Trek 2, and I had to go with Star Trek 2. For T, we're going with Terminator 2: Judgment Day. When I'm forced into a corner and have to say what my favorite movie of all time is, I normally go with Terminator 2: Judgment Day. I love action, I love sci-fi, I love time travel, I love Arnold Schwarzenegger, I love Linda Hamilton, and this movie squishes them all together, all from James Cameron, one of my favorite directors of all time, and you simply get a phenomenal action movie. It takes the top tier level mythology that was established with the original Terminator, gives it a much bigger budget, and it tells a more emotional story, and it's a little bit of a boy and his dog story, except it's a boy and his killer robot story, all leading up to this final sequence where the Terminator wants to cry, but he can't and must sacrifice himself every single time. It brings out the man tears. For you, I'm going with Unbreakable. A great original superhero story that doesn't play into any of the genre tropes. It is an origin story, a story of becoming as this normal man who always has felt off and felt like he's never lived up to his potential, slowly realizes that he's something special all along the way, and told during M. Night Shyamalan's prime, where he knew how to construct these slowly, deliberately paced stories, all leading to a final twist that pays off the whole film. For me, it absolutely works. I love the characters in this film. This is my personal favorite M. Night film. And while I love the movie Unbreakable, unfortunately, M. Night Shyamalan's filmography was not unbreakable.
I thought my jokes were bad.
For V, we're going with Vampires, John Carpenter's Vampires. Now, I do enjoy this movie, but honestly, there's a limited number of V movies to go with. So I was debating on going with V for Vendetta, but if I'm going to a deserted island and I'm going to be all alone, I definitely want to have some John Carpenter. I definitely want to have some vampire hunting action going on, more so than Alan Moore political allegory, especially because politics would be rendered meaningless while stuck on an island by myself. But the fantasy of slaying vampires never expires. That leads us to W, and I'm going with Warrior. This is my go-to movie to recommend to people. When they say, hey, can you recommend a movie to me? I always start with Warrior. It's a movie that everyone I know that has seen it likes it. A lot of them absolutely love it. But when it first came out, it kind of flopped. So it's this underwatched movie. So if you haven't seen this movie,
Do it! Just do it!
you know what your homework assignment is. Basically, it's an MMA sports drama where you really care about this family that ends up in this MMA tournament. And the first hour kind of sets up the characters and the situations. And then the last hour is just nonstop situation of payoff where these fights happen and you're really invested in it. And every time there's a victory, you feel it. Every time there's a loss or a setback, you feel it. And it's just one of the most amazing emotional hours of film ever. For X, we're going with X-Men First Class. For me, this is the X-Men proper film that's aged the best.
You have a problem with that?
When they first announced this film, I thought that they were just milking this franchise and it was a bad idea. And then the first trailer came out and I didn't think it was a very good trailer. Then I went to go see the movie and I was like, wait, I actually really dug that. And they really pulled that off. It has a very cool kind of 60s spy aesthetic while still being an X-Men movie. But really what makes it work are the two lead characters and their relationship as you see Professor Xavier and Magneto working together as friends, but their different backgrounds, their different wounds, their different faults, you know is going to break them apart. So this is a movie that when I first watched it, it surprised me. And then when I rewatch it, I just discover more and more things about it that I love. And I like it more every single time I watch it. There's so many amazing sequences in here that Matthew Vaughn directed wonderfully. For our next to last letter, Y, I'm going with You're Next. Now, this was a small home invasion survivalist film from about 10 years ago. There's no big stars in it. At the time, the director wasn't someone that was known whatsoever. And I went to go see it kind of on a whim with my mother of all people, and I absolutely loved it. It's an example of a simple concept executed with excellence. Every detail about the story, the twists, the turns, the characters, the way it plays out, I thought was handled perfectly. Legitimately, I went home from watching the movie and I just couldn't wait to walk my wife through the plot of the film of all things. And once again, it's a fairly straightforward film that just made all the right choices throughout the story, all the way up into what you see in the final shot before the credits roll. So if you're kind of into horror, home invasion films, and you haven't seen You're Next, go check it out. And finally, for Z, we're going with Zoolander. The star-studded Ben Stiller film is hilarious as well as incredibly quotable.
What is this?
A center for ants?
How can we be expected to teach children to learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building?
This is a perfectly weird film that sets up a series of simply outrageous scenarios that somehow all of it works, or almost all of it works. Everything about it sounds like a wacky bad idea, but when you pull it together, Ben Stiller found the perfect tone to pull off this odd set of weird situations. There's not actually a lot of competition when it comes to the letter Z. Perhaps I could have gone with Zodiac, but for me, the one that means more to me is certainly Zoolander. So there you have it. Those are my favorite movies for each letter of the alphabet. If you want some of my other favorite lists, you can see my favorite movie from every year I've been alive right there, or just simply my top 20 favorite movies right there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.